not just one person. I mean, I've got a pretty big relation, and everybody is affected by this.
Number 75, Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, 10:44 a.m. New York time.
A considerable insult to her already grave injury in having been scammed.
Uno 5 is now live. Streaming American Truck Simulator. Number 75, Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, 10:44 a.m. New York time.
That's right. That's right. She's been scammed again. I mean, so before the 2017 tax changes under the Trump administration, victims of this type of crime could deduct from their taxes the loss of the money. As a part of trying to pay for that package, they took away that deduction. So Judith and thousands more victims who don't have this money because it was stolen now have
Nebraska
to pay
Public
taxes on
Media,
money they don't
PBS,
have.
NPR.
And so she's facing a tax bill between the federal government and Maryland state taxes of over $170,000. I mean, talk about insult, injury after the crime, and that deduction is the removal of the deduction is slated to end this year, but I'm hoping, because I'm a columnist, I can say that the Congress will take this issue up now that they have resumed their duties to address this grave mistake to help these folks who have lost so much. And this is, and I know some people were thinking, well, they did this, but Judith now doesn't have that money, so that if it comes to the point where her husband needs more health care or she needs more health care, then this becomes all of our problem, because then they may have to have, resort to, programs, Medicaid or something like that. And so this is a problem that affects all of us.
Yeah.
And we should be very concerned about this. This ought to be
find a new
priority to help alleviate.
Keep right, and then continue straight on.
To so many people.
Go straight on.
Again, since you mentioned that people can have the tendency to think, well, Judith did this because she was the victim, she fell prey to these scammers.
I gotta adjust.
On the other hand, if
there's a problem
someone is scammed in the United States by an entity or an individual who's here in the U.S., who commits fraud, right, which is what this is. This is a massive act of fraud. There is a court system in which ideally the person can get their money back, right? Because it's recognized as a criminal act, and they are recognized rightfully as the victim of that criminal act. But because the scam originated overseas, is there any way or no way at all for Judith to recoup what was taken from her?
It's rare for victims in these type of situations to get any of their money back.
When
the money's gone.
Enable, okay? When enable interior camera looks to the left or right based on the camera view. So yeah. When the
FBI is working
blinker stops, the problem is that it stops. You have to clear a green light. Maximum 45. All the trucks on the left here, I don't know why. Maybe the truck left. Oh, I have to turn left anyway. So we need a space here.
Having said that, one of the reasons why Judith came forward and I wanted to write this series is that we want to encourage more people to come forward, because the more people come forward, the better the cases they can build, and hopefully get to that money before it's gone. They can look for bank accounts, where in case the money was deposited, or if it's in cryptocurrency, we should just track that down. And so it's very important for victims to come forward. And I know that's a hard ask for them. But the FBI, in one report, they was able to track down this ransomware case, and thousands of victims, and only about 20% actually filed a complaint. And so we know that there are more people out there in the shadows, silent, because they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be criticized. And they will be, because this is,
and then
I
turn
think
left.
People, they want to do this because they feel like if I say this, then it couldn't happen to me.
Turn left.
But when we do that, we keep them behind that wall of silence. And it impedes the ability of the investigators to do their job.
Yeah.
And if we don't hear more from them, And we think the odd case. And also, it's not just happening to seniors. Actually, young adults are more likely to be scammed than seniors. So this is not an old person's problem or someone with dementia. You heard Judith. She's brilliant. She's articulate. She's such a wonderful person. And which is why it crushes me that this happened to this individual who spent her life serving other people.
So, Michelle, I'm really glad that you brought that up about young people, because it is easy to sort of, again, fall into a mental trap thinking, well, when people are vulnerable when they get older, right? And so those are the targets. But what you're quoting is a fact from a report from the Federal Trade Commission itself that says people in their 20s are, in fact, scammed at higher rates because they're online more. And maybe they don't actually also have enough life experience as well. And so they are exposed more into fake offers for jobs that you've written, and investment scams, and fake shopping sites even, and it seems real to them. So I just wanted to highlight what you just said, because it's so important. This isn't just a senior citizens problem.
Go straight on.
It's an everybody problem.
It's an everybody's problem. That's exactly right. So, and the difference is that the money, the amount stolen is larger because they have more money. Yeah. That's why they get the big headlines. But it isn't because of who they are. It's because that's where the money is.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to add just one little thing, because
then turn right.
This particular scam criminal enterprise was in India, and many of them are. They're also in Southeast Asia, frequently in Russia and in China. So, of course, my mind, in addition to all the issues that you brought up in your series about Judith, went to, well, is there anything that U.S. authorities can do to encourage the shutting down of these scammers in the countries where they're located? And so we actually reached out to Betsy Broder. She's an attorney who, for a long time, worked for the Federal Trade Commission tracking international fraud. She's not with the FTC anymore. And in fact, she worked on several cases in years past that were in India. And we asked her about, is the Indian government or federal and state level government in India willing to help U.S. authorities?
3 trailers parked there.
When she began her work, there was really very little appetite in India for addressing fraud, but interestingly, that changed once it became clear to the eyes of the Indian government that legitimate call centers, the ones for the banks and stuff that you had mentioned, Michelle, that the reputation of illegitimate call centers in India was at stake.
They did not want the whole industry to be tarnished by these frauds, and the way that we explain that is people don't want to hear an Indian accent on the other end of a service call and think that they're being defrauded. And I think that there are a number of prosecutors, both law enforcement and prosecutors, who understand how important it is to address this problem for India's own self-interest, and that's encouraging. Having said that, the problem is immense, and you can shut down a call center in one place, and then the next day, something else will pop up. That's not an excuse not to do anything, it's just a function of the reality.
So that's Betsy Broder, who used to work at the FTC. That whack-a-mole problem is going to go on for a while, so I don't want to spend too much more time on it.
Here?
We'll continue to talk about it in future shows, I'm sure. But Michelle, right now, at this second, someone is getting a call like that. Someone is getting a text. Someone is being told, my name is IRS agent such and such.
Walden Landscape Supply.
What should people do when that happens to them?
Yeah. So just don't believe anybody. Any call, any text, any emails. Your initial response is, it's a fraud. Just say it to yourself, it's a fraud, it's a fraud, it's a fraud. And then jump out and go online. And you've got to be careful about even Googling online. So you want to go to the official site of that agency or company to try to figure out if they've actually called you. And I've gotten a call from my bank. My credit card was compromised. They sent me a text message. The text message fell under other legitimate text messages from that bank, but I saw it and I said, nope, I'm not the one. And I deleted it, and then I called the bank and I said, I got this text message. I didn't believe it. And she said, no, that was us, but you did the right thing.
Right.
Don't believe anything. If my husband called me right now and said, baby, I need to move $100, I'm like, hang this phone up. I'm going to go around the corner and see if you're in your office calling me. I think that's the best way to protect yourself. So, because a lot of the tips that we have been using in the past just aren't working
from a landscape.
People see things like, if it's too good to be true, it is. But if that victim is in the ether, then it is truth to them.
Yeah.
Let's go to the other one then.
The government won't call you, but you got to call with the government ID on your caller ID. So you're thinking, well, that doesn't apply to me because this actually is the government calling. And so I think the way you protect yourself is don't believe anything ever and check it out. And I'll have to throw this in. Actually, no action gives you more protection than acting. So a lot of people react quickly because they think, well, my money's going to be gone. But if someone takes your money and you have not talked to them, you've not given them a code from your phone, you have more legal protection than if you act. So I know that's hard to do in the moment, but just think, if I don't act, I've got more protection. If I act,
yeah, so I didn't mean to jump in there, Michelle, but I just want to say that's so important, right? Because the second that you actually engage, then you're losing a lot of that legal protection that you said.
That is correct.
So do nothing. And also I just want to highlight, when you said you call your bank back, you call your bank at a number that you know belongs to the bank, not the number that was sent to you, right?
That's right. Small difference.
I don't use the numbers in there, and I have a list of all the numbers of our banks in my contact, and I use them.
And I tried to code for the double parking, but it didn't work.
For my so that I don't even have to go online, because I talk to them, I know the number for real, and so I would suggest people do that. And
text error, probably.
Voicemail, if you call my home and I'm going to put it on my cell phone, I actually have a message that says, look, I know you a scammer. Hang my phone up. And that, because their algorithms, their things, the moment you say I think it's a scam, like they'll hang up. And so I found that I'm having more hang-ups on my phone by just saying, I know you're a scammer. Yeah. Don't call me again. So I would suggest you change your voice message to say that.
Well, Michelle Singletary, she is the personal finance columnist for the Washington Post. And she wrote this remarkable 7-part series about Judith Boivin called Scammed. And we have a link to that at onpointradio.org. Michelle, thank you so much for reporting this and bringing this story to us. And thank you for joining us at On Point, as always.
Oh, these are nice bins there.
So much time.
Mostly all the same.
Turn left.
Kind of wood chip or whatever you.
And I'm hoping that
looks like dirt, probably. Kind of sand for landscape.
And I just want to also say that Judith is my hero.
Yeah, same.
She's so brave for what she did.
This is On Point.
Turn left.
On Point is a production of WBUR Boston and is distributed by APM, American Public Media. Support for On Point comes from Seed.
Go straight on.
So1 is a 24-strain 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic engineered to survive digestion, support healthy regularity, and promote whole body health. Learn more at seed.com/public. And BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public.
Spring has sprung. It's the perfect time to go outside and dive into a great book, like King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby.
That's a Southern crime drama inspired by The Godfather. You know, there's like an ailing patriarch, a family that's falling apart, and the son
Go
has to
straight
come
on,
back and pull
and
it
then
together.
keep right.
I'm Ari Shapiro, fiction for spring on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Keep right, and then turn left.
Listen to All Things Considered from 4 to 7 Central. And
Turn
then following
right.
All Things Considered, it's Fresh Air.
This is Terry Gross, the host of Fresh Air. Join me weekday evenings on Nebraska Public Media for long-form interviews with the people behind some of the best new books, movies, TV shows, and music, as well as interviews with the investigative journalists breaking some of the most important stories of our time. Check us out tonight at 7 Central. Thanks for listening to Nebraska Public Media.
Tonight on television, our What If Nebraska series about innovation continues. A Norfolk entrepreneur uses drones to write stories in the nighttime sky. Students build a small satellite, and a tech company tests its surgical robot in space. Watch What If tonight at 9 Central on Nebraska Public Media. I'm Genevieve Randall. Quick look at our Nebraska forecast. Both the northern panhandle and the north central parts of the state have a 50% chance for some rain mixed with snow. Highs around 41 to 45 degrees. For the southwest part of Nebraska, it could get up to 58 degrees. Meanwhile, south central, 30% chance for scattered showers, high of 56. Across the east today, highs around 52 degrees. This is Nebraska Public Media, 91.1 KUCV, Lincoln.
Keep right, and then turn right.
This is Bird Note. This is the song of a white-crowned sparrow. Some describe it as, see me, pretty, pretty me.
Turn right.
The white-crowned sparrow pours out its song over and over on spring and summer days, and even on moonlit nights. The buzzy song seems to float on the air in much of the western United States. At first, you might think the sparrow is just another little brown bird, but the elegant black and white stripes on its head make this bird stand out. Now here's a curious thing. Just as people in different regions may have different dialects, white crowns have different songs. Here's a white crown from Washington State.
Get ready, turn right.
Turn right.
And now, another 300 miles away in Oregon. Quite a difference, don't you think? Once more,
what the hell is this?
Okay,
and now the other.
Let's find a new route.
Regional dialects arise because young white-crowned sparrows may learn their song from birds other than their parents. Slight variations get copied until all the birds in that territory are singing the new version of the song. It's like the old game of telephone.
Keep left,
the song changes
and then exit left.
as it moves along.
Exit left.
Listen to your dialects at I'm Mary McCann. It gives you the sounds of birds every day, and you get the sights as well when you follow us on Instagram as Bird Note Radio.
This week on Friday Live, hear live performances from poet Sean Ballard, singer-songwriters Brad Coleridge, Madeline Redall, and
turn right. Turn right here. It's telling you to turn right.
If you can be part of our live
Isn't that
audience,
crazy?
join us at our studios in Lincoln.
Why
Doors
cross
open at
like this?
9:30. Show starts at 10 a.m.
Just to slow the traffic
Find
down?
more or listen online at nebraskapublicmedia.org.
Oh my God.
Get ready to turn right.
Support for
That was so
programming on
confusing.
Nebraska
I've never
Public
seen
Media
that
comes from the
before.
Arts for the Soul Music and Fine Arts Series, a multimedia concert production called For the Trees will feature the Tesla String Quartet and local urban forestry experts who will speak about community support for trees in an urban landscape. Friday, April 11th, 7:30 p.m. at Lincoln's First Presbyterian Church, fpclincoln.org/events.
Torques and gameplay. Yeah, there it is. Suspension, truck stability, braking, drive shaft torque. So I have 10%. That's too much. It's gonna go down to 5, and we'll try it. But ideally,
Go
I mean,
straight on.
we could have tested it in the repair. So now I gotta stop the radio because the stupid music. Okay, let's go here. Sorry about that, but just too much. Oh, they had a show on scamming, and I tried to put it on. I missed more than half of it, but
go straight on.
Yeah, they even misinterpreted the facts themselves. They're really, you know, not making full analysis of the facts.
At the roundabout, take the second exit.
Yeah, parking brakes again. That was very good.
Exit now. Turn right.
Outrider. Yeah, there's an accomplishment here. There's still some torque, but not as bad as before, especially on the bobtail. I mean, it's even worse than with the truck.
Get ready to turn right. Turn right. This is where it ends.
Good for you. We got a repair too, right? So your external, let's see, industrial pallet, that would be nice. 107. So we have to deliver to the name, what's it called? RV Wanderlust. You can't. What's the name of that company? Wonder. I have it right here. Omaha Wanderlust. Wanderlust RV. And that's the accomplishment. So perhaps, I don't understand why. What's the thing? Wanderlust RV. Nebraska blog. Wanderlust RV operation related achievement. Depot related achievement. Vehicle dealer requires the player to complete delivery from Outrider plant in Lincoln to every Wanderlust RV dealership in Nebraska. So there are 3. Let's see the name of the company, right? General contract. So no, that would be under freight, right? The name of the company. Freight market. Toggle help tips on off. Select a job offer. On the map, select the discovered city to see available job offer to start there. And start driving. Use sorting to see. Well, there is one for the company name. And those ones are, I don't remember. What's the company name? Your Desktop? No. It's under Jump. Quick Jump. Oh, there. It's a type of truck. Oh, they removed it. There used to be a filter for the companies, but now it's no longer there anymore. Did they remove the company filter? Graphic, real company mods. Oh, it says American Truck Simulator is reaching the end. It says future plan for American Truck Studio. In-game depiction of Route 66. Company filter. Okay, I'm gonna make a copy. First duplicate. And then go here. Company filter. Company filter. In-game setting. Profile inspector. Working for one company. What jobs are shown? There are filter in the top left. Click on. They do not exclude certain cargo. 2022. So where are the company name? Those are just the type of jobs. Oh, it's under service. Used truck, garage, bank, recruitment, vehicle diagnostic. Catalog maybe? Oh, there it is. Logistic map. There we go. Now we're talking. This is what I was looking for. Articulated. This is specific cargo. Now what we need is the company name. So Wanderlust. There it is. Now we can see where they are. There's one in Arkansas, and then the three. So there's only three. So every. Now, what kind of cargo? Imported car parts. So Outrider. Okay, Outrider to Wanderlust. Oh, you cannot choose both. So there's no way to tell. Wow, what are we gonna do? You can't. You have to look. Like if we check on here. Let's go back to jobs. And I think you could probably do a quick job. Vehicle dealer. Clears to complete. 3 deliveries from the delivery vehicle factory in Lincoln to each of the RV dealers, and is known Outrider, and RV dealers in Columbus, Norfolk, known as Wanderlust RV. But so what kind of I don't know. It's not gonna see. So we'll have to go to Outrider. Let's see here. First of all, we have to take the jobs from this place. We don't have quick jobs, but we're using our own truck. So Lincoln, LE Max. Let's see here. Farmer's Barn, right? Farmer, Wander, nothing. So we cannot do that right now. That's it. That means that's only coming whenever. Wow. from to. Okay, so we're not going to do that. Let's go back to the history file. It was called Nebraska blog, right? And let's go back here. Wanderlust RV, no, that's not it. I'll go back to Nebraska. Achievements, there it is. So, the DLC, there was an elephant here. Let's see. Oh, there was another one. I don't remember. Is it below, maybe? 10 o'clock. It's now 11:15. You can check the radio. Oh no. Oh, because on news, I see it's music anyways.
Most models show that, you know, it will be reflected in overall inflation over the coming year or two.
Well, there's lots of fear about a recession, and I don't want us to look at this announcement in a vacuum, because there are other economic indicators. People watch unemployment rates, people keep an eye on the stock market, thousands of federal workers out of jobs now. So what are economists saying about the possibility of a recession?
They're nudging their forecast higher for a recession. They're seeing, you know, signs of slowdown, as we mentioned there, in consumer sentiment. Hiring is certainly slowing down. The stock market is off 9% off its high only a month or so ago. So there are warning signals. But at the same time, Jen, we're also not there yet. I mean, the core metrics, unemployment is still low.
Nebraska 100% Achievement Guide, ENG.
The broader economy is still considered to be in relatively good shape. So right here, right now, you know, no one's calling a precipice, fall off a cliff for the economy. But the question will be, again, going back to the breadth and duration of these tariffs, maybe 6 months from now, it might be a different story. You might start to see it impact much more in terms of jobs and investment.
Well, and briefly walk us through what the Trump administration will happen when they enact this plan. What will we be watching for to see whether or not it's been successful?
Well, I mean, I think first you want to see whether President Trump focuses on the trade deficit. He believes that if the U.S. government, if the U.S. is importing more than it exports from a given country, that's essentially giving money to that other country, and that we're subsidizing that other country. Not quite how most economists see it, but that's core to his view of the world. So I think if this does succeed at bringing down those trade deficits, that will be an indicator that he's achieving his stated goals. That wouldn't happen overnight. It takes time for trade flows to readjust, and these are being implemented, as far as we can tell, quite quickly.
We're talking to Neil Irwin, Chief Economic Correspondent at Axios, also with us, and Curran, the Global Economy News Reporter for Bloomberg News. We're also hearing from you. Jason emails, I work in the jewelry industry, and the uncertainty of the American market has driven the price of gold up. This is an industry that is primarily run by smaller businesses, family-owned retailers, and family-owned wholesalers. It also relies on imported materials, tariffs,
so where are we here? This one. Achievements. Cruising, Missouri, World of Truck events.
Cruising Missouri World of Trucks event.
Join us on Thursday to celebrate release of new Missouri DLC. Okay, I might be able to get it. I don't know if I have a discount. View on your wish list. We'll send an email when it releases. Nordic Horizon, Missouri, release date, no price. No user preview. Okay, so about this content, plan release. Okay, we're going to close this. Rules. Okay, show me state. Ah, the show me state. I didn't know that. Why is it called a show me state? So we could show me the slogan is not efficient, but it is common throughout the state. Oh, they have a giant shuttle court for badminton there, and this was a nice. Some lights, yeah. It looks like gold. It's just like. Due to a statement made by U.S. Congressman Willard Duncan Vandiver in 1899 emphasizing the need for proof or evidence. And the phrase "I'm from Missouri, you've got to show me" became synonymous with the state's practical non-nonsense attitude. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go here.
The neighboring area where Tessa lives.
Great. Okay, while you're on the jump, we challenge best community ever to achieve a collective goal of driving 125 million miles, 201 million kilometers, delivering cargo to and from any city in Missouri. While cruising Missouri, you'll experience landscape from rolling hills and wandering, meandering rivers to dense forests and expansive plains. Large plain, the state park and Ozark Mountains offer breathtaking views and are home to diverse range of wildlife, including deer, foxes, raccoons, salamanders, and the iconic American black bear. I thought it was going to be an eagle, but yeah, the skies are home to a variety of birds, including American bald eagle. Well, there you go, and making the migratory stop. Okay, Missouri is transformed from an agricultural beginning into a bustling industrial center, drawing major businesses with a strategic location, robust logistic infrastructure. The state's economy thrives on diverse industries, from a booming aerospace sector and automotive factories to renowned wine region and more. During your travel, you can look forward to spectacular highlight of the Show Me State Church has. Okay. Now, as past cruising, you can use your own trailer experience all these in external market. Missouri DLC introduces 12 incredible new cities. Complete your personal goal by delivering jobs to and from all 12 cities, with each job being 100 miles, 161 kilometers or more. Unique reward those await those accomplish this feat. So 12 deliveries is going to be 1,200 miles, yeah? Prepare for the newest edition using external, this is the community goal, 125 million. When a player completes a delivery tour from 12 cities, Missouri cities, or to or from, they'll achieve their personal goal. Note that in-game city of Kansas City spans both the Missouri and Kansas DLC. Only jobs to or from the Missouri portion of the city shown as Kansas City MO on the external contract job screen count toward this event. All jobs for the event need to be at least 100 miles, 161 kilometers or more. You can check if your recent deliveries met these conditions using your logbook and your World Truck profile. Reward player that deliver cargo to or from 12 Missouri will gain a personal World Truck achievement and a Beast of Burden ATS truck paint job inventory item, which is a donkey. You can see there with a load on his back, a heavy load actually, poor donkey. Community want a community goal of 125 million. Oh, you got a donkey item to put in your truck. On the dash. Striking mule ornament and a show me pillow steam inventory item. Oh, there. It's a pillow with it's a blue bird or some sparrow. Some kind of weird bird. I don't know. I've never seen a bird with that color. Must complete at least your personal goal. You have until June the 8th, so April, May, and June is going to be 2 months. Yeah. All right, so I can wait before. Okay, so we'll have to get another destination here. We're looking for the achievements, and then we can go back to the radio, I think, here.
Economy's overall strength. Well, it was in a relatively good space. But the really interesting thing is, in the few months since the turn of the year, when the economy was expected to remain strong under President Trump, sentiment has turned a lot. You know, the US is now no longer being seen as the kind of outperformer of the world economy. It's being expected to slow down. The OECD have cut their forecast. The Fed have cut their forecast for US growth. Wall Street is cutting their forecast for US growth. It's a question of just how slow the slowdown is. Obviously, the administration says, look, some pain now, and then after this, we'll get to the good stuff, maybe tax cuts, and it will drive growth and revenue and the like. But I think right here, right now, uncertainty, and it has lost some of that tag that you mentioned, Jen.
We got this email from Pep, who says, we were saving to buy a new car in 2 to 3 years when 25% tariffs for imported cars came to the forefront. We changed our plans. Our new Subaru will arrive this week. We didn't want to pay $10,000 more for the car and have no idea where Trump, the economy, or inflation will be 2 years from now. When we look ahead to whatever the president will announce in the Rose Garden today, what types of goods do economists predict will likely cost more once this new tariff plan is revealed?
I mean, again, it comes down to the breadth and the detail, but we're talking here about household goods. And as Neil said, if you want to call it Trade War 1.0 in the first Trump administration, that was like industrial goods, components, the kind of things that aren't on everyone's kitchen table. Now we're talking about tariffs on, there's already tariffs on food from Mexico, blanket tariffs on China. It means it's the stuff that we all buy every day of the week, from clothing to household electronics to whatever else in our kitchen, Jen. So we're talking about a breadth of price increases now. You get into the debate, who's going to swallow that? Will the seller swallow some of that in order to maintain their U.S. market share, or will U.S. companies pass on that? But then the bottom line from economists is at least some of those costs will be passed on, so goods will be more expensive.
Well, Neil, I want to turn to you here because you mentioned the president said there will be some short-term pain. Short-term could be defined in a lot of different ways. What are economists predicting right now? What does short-term actually mean?
Well, I think right now, most of as just said, the odds of recession are ticking up, but are still not likely or still not probable. One thing I've learned, I've been an economics writer for 25 years, and it takes a lot to knock the U.S. economy entirely off of its stride. It's a big, strong economy that normally grows 2.5% a year, and bad things can happen in the economy that aren't necessarily recessionary. So that's the situation here. Even if you subtract 0.5%, a percentage point from GDP growth, that's still an economy that's growing.
Well, I am in Columbus.
So, that said, there's a lot of things swirling around right now. There's the hit to confidence, there's stock prices fall, there's wealth effects, maybe people feel less wealthy so they don't spend as much. There's DOGE cutbacks, there's potential federal spending cuts that could kind of suck money and jobs out of the economy. So if all those things interact in a way that really causes some pain, you could imagine a real slump over just the next few quarters. It just isn't in the data yet, as we've been talking about. It's in the soft data, in the confidence surveys, the sentiment surveys. It's not in the hard data around jobs, unemployment, retail sales, things like that.
Well, several members of the international community have vowed to retaliate against the U.S. if Trump puts tariffs in place. Here's what the president of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, told the European Parliament yesterday.
Europe did not start this confrontation. We think it is wrong. But my message to you today is that we have everything we need to protect our people and our prosperity. We have the largest single market in the world. We have the strength to negotiate. We have the power to push back.
Neil, what else are we hearing from U.S. trade partners in the days leading up? What have we heard from them in the days leading up to this announcement?
So they're clearly going to retaliate, but they want to be strategic and careful in how they retaliate. They aren't going to do, for the most part, the kind of broad-based slap a tariff on everything approach that Trump seems to be talking about. There's some reporting out of Canada in the last couple of days that they are focused not on things that affect Canadian citizens, the grocery prices, so they might want to avoid tariffs on food and those types of imports, but they do want to do things that get at the president's vulnerabilities and affect industries and constituencies that matter to President Trump. I think the Europeans will do the same. There's been a back and forth on the Europeans taxing bourbon and other American alcohol exports, and then Trump threatens to retaliate with a 200% tariff on wine and spirits out of Europe. That's the kind of thing we're going to see. It's this tactical back and forth on where are some pain points for each side and who can get the most advantage from it.
Well, I want to get to this email we got from Maryland, who says, as a small business owner, I am crushed by the tariffs. Every single one of my Canadian clients and every Canadian client in my pipeline has canceled HR services for me due to tariffs. Each business leader told me as much as they love my work, they are not sending money to the U.S. unless mission critical. I am back to square one. Ouch. I mean, is there potential fallout that is not going to be measured by, the back and forth between President Trump and leaders of other countries? Fallout that's happening on a smaller scale that's not directly related to tariffs, but is a reflection of the tension in these international relationships. And
I think smaller companies, in particular in the US, are kind of feeling the front line of this, Jen. We speak to companies all the time. We hear anecdotes. We're just not hiring. We've paused our hiring. We've put a pause on our investment. Kind of decisions that don't necessarily show up in aggregate economic data, but on the ground means that there are certainly opportunities for expansion that they're not doing anymore. So those smaller companies are among the most vulnerable. I should say, though, as well, within that debate, Jen, there is a constituency of small companies who also want tariffs because they want protection against, in particular, cheap Chinese competitors, and they say they're up against state-sponsored competitors. So for sure, there's a lot of pain in the economy and a lot of complaints from smaller businesses, but there is also a constituency out there who say they do need this kind of protection.
So you said, but specifically from China, this tariff plan is not just directed at China.
Quite right. There are different ways you can argue about this, but let's just say one of the biggest sources of complaint is that China right now is in a position to overproduce and send that produce to the US at a much cheaper cost than its US competitors can. And a lot of companies here complain to us, for example, that they're up against unfair competition and they want action taken against that. So there is that view out there.
We're speaking to Enda Curran. He's the global economy news reporter for Bloomberg News. Also with us, Neil Irwin, chief economic correspondent at Axios. We're hearing from so many of you. Jeffrey in North Carolina emails, as a veteran-owned small business owner, I sell very specialized equipment to the U.S. military and government entities that is imported from Slovenia. I'm very concerned over future import tariffs, as this directly impacts my profit margins and customer pricing, especially on items with long delivery schedules where I've accepted the orders, but the tariffs have been applied between the time the order is placed and when the items are delivered. I recently lost a significant Air Force contract due to the fact I had to account for these potential tariffs when quoting on a competitive bid. We heard from Carla in Michigan, who says we have plans to replace our car and build a garage. Not only are those plans on hold, but with the uncertainty of Social Security and Medicare, we're sitting tight on our cash. We might need that garage and car money to live on and pay for medical care. You can add your voice to the conversation. If you own a small business, if you had plans to maybe do a project in your home or on your property, or maybe you were planning a move or a big purchase, tell us how these potential tariffs affected your plans. Have you made different plans for the future? Email us at 1a@wamu.org. I'm Jen White. You're listening to 1A. Let's bring a new voice into the conversation. Trip Mickle covers Silicon Valley for the New York Times. He joins us now from San Francisco. Trip, welcome to 1A.
Good morning.
Your coverage focuses mostly on Apple. They're the world's largest tech company and producer of the iPhone. Apple holds more than 50% of the market. The vast majority of the company's iPhones are finished in China. And I just want to note before we go any further, we invited Apple to join the program, but they didn't respond. The invitation does stand. Trip, how does Apple respond to tariffs on Chinese goods how did they respond during Trump's first term?
Apple took two approaches. The first was to I guess, foster as productive a relationship with between Tim Cook and Donald Trump as possible, which helped them earn some exemptions from tariffs during the first Trump administration. And then the second was to begin to reshuffle their supply chain. They started to move some of the production of products like AirPods and iPads to Vietnam, and then began to accelerate a push to begin making iPhones in India. Initially, the push in India was designed to make iPhones for the Indian market, which is the second largest smartphone market behind China. But as tariff pressure ratcheted up, they began to have bigger ambitions about making more iPhones there than they'd initially planned.
So how are the recent tariffs on Chinese goods different than those we saw during Trump's first term?
There's no forgiveness this time around, right? There's no accommodation. There's no relief. And Apple was a huge beneficiary of that during the first Trump administration. Smartphones were never targeted with tariffs. And when the Trump administration moved to slap tariffs on products like the Apple Watch, Apple put in a request for an exemption, and they were eventually granted that. And so they really kind of skated by, you know, they were always kind of living under the cloud and the threat of tariffs, but they were never actually punished or forced to deal with the consequences of tariffs.
President Trump has promised to bring manufacturing back stateside. This is something Apple experimented with. In 2019, they tried assembling Mac Pro computers in Texas as opposed to China. What happened?
Forgive the fact check here, Jen. That factory was actually started in 2013, not 2019. And so Trump did make a very public visit to that factory and claimed credit for it in 2019. But Apple had been producing high-end Macs for desktops since 2013. And if you run back the clock to 2013, this process was really just an ordeal for the company. They ran into a number of headaches in manufacturing and trying to begin to manufacture in the U.S. On the employee side, they just found a workforce that was not as punctual and diligent as what they were accustomed to dealing with in China. There were reports in the Wall Street Journal at the time or years later that showed how some employees would work 8-hour shifts. When it was time for their replacement to show up, sometimes that replacement would be late and the employee would just walk off the assembly line, which would force the entire assembly line to shut down. Another issue that they ran into, which was reported on in the New York Times, was they had very specific custom screws that they wanted for this factory. And they could not find a factory that could make those screws at scale in the United States and supply them in a flexible fashion, right? Apple really likes to be nimble about how much inventory it has on hand, and so it wants to increase production and decrease production as orders come in, and it just could not find suppliers in the U.S. that could meet those demands and specifications.
We're discussing Trump's sweeping new tariff plan. We're here with Trip Mickle, Silicon Valley reporter for the New York Times. Also with us, Inda Curran, the global economy news reporter for Bloomberg News, and Neil Irwin, chief economic correspondent at Axios. We're hearing from you. Mary emails, I was in a meeting to replace my car. Not now, especially with threats to Social Security. Seniors everywhere, I'm sure, will be pulling back. The auto repair industry might profit. Buying into a retirement complex will be another shaking prospect. This is not a country I recognize. Change can be good, but this is cruel on so many fronts. Susan in New York emails, I play the Trinidadian steel pan drum. I asked the person who imports these drums how the tariffs will affect him. He says if there is a 25% U.S. tariff on imported metal goods, plus a 15% counter tariff imposed by Trinidad and Tobago, plus 25% on goods imported from countries that buy Venezuelan oil, the drum maker will be out of business. Still to come, how sustainable are tariffs as a long-term economic strategy for the U.S.? We get to that after the break. This is 1A.
Go straight on.
Robin Young. As the number of unemployed government workers grows, so do the number of job scams targeting personal information and money.
It's an epidemic. And because the scammers read the headlines like everybody else, they know that people are looking for jobs.
What you can do to stay safe next time, here and now.
Today at 1 Central on Nebraska Public Media's HD2.
Keep right and then turn right.
On the next Fresh Air, immigration and customs enforcement is in force, and students are in the crosshairs at college campuses nationwide, from Columbia to the University of Alabama. Legal scholar Daniel Canstrom joins us to unpack the law, the history, and the human cost. Join us.
Today at 11 a.m. Central on Nebraska Public Media's HD2.
Get ready, turn right. Turn right.
You don't need to wait for a membership drive to become a member of Nebraska Public Media. Membership is our largest and most reliable source of revenue. Your pledge of $50 or whatever amount is right for you truly does make a difference.
Let's see
Please
it.
pledge
Do I'm
by
green?
calling 800-290-6850
Corn
or pledge
grain.
online at
So-
nebraskapublicmedia.org.
I'll take it.
Support for NPR comes from the station
The one in
and from
Columbus was
Proven Winners
closer than
with
that.
Proven Winners Color Choice
Corn
shrubs,
grain,
offering
this
flowering
one is
shrubs and
longer.
evergreens selected for home landscapes. More at provenwinnerscolorchoice.com/NPR. From Dignity Memorial, helping families today to protect their loved ones tomorrow. Planning celebrations of life in advance can give families peace of mind. Learn more at dignitymemorial.com. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
Back to tariffs in a moment, but first we'd love your help with tomorrow's show. You might have heard the word deep fake. It describes photos and videos of people that are digitally altered to depict something that never happened. Individuals can create deep fakes from photos on social media and then post the content. Deep fakes are often sexual in nature and posted without the subject's knowledge. They aren't new, but with advances in AI, it's becoming much more widespread. Newer undressing apps powered by AI can realistically alter photos in just a few seconds. We'll talk to 2 reporters about their new podcast investigating sexual deepfakes and how this content has harmed girls at one high school in New York State. It's a story that's now playing out at schools across the country, and we want to hear your stories. Has someone in your life or your community been impacted by a deep fake photo? What was the fallout of that fake content being spread? Tell us about it. 855-236-1A1A. We'll talk about what this AI-powered technology can do now and the risks it poses, especially for young people. What do you want to know about where this technology is going? Send us a voicemail at 855-236-1212 or leave a message with our app, 1A Vox Pop, and we'll get to your questions tomorrow. Now back to Trump's new tariff plan with Enda Curran, the global economy news reporter for Bloomberg News, Neil Irwin, chief economic correspondent at Axios, and Trip Nickel, Silicon Valley reporter for the New York Times. We're also here with you. Chris emails, I am elderly and widowed and live on meager capital gains from an old 401k. Tariffs have created uncertainty. My investment portfolio has lost cash, so I can't liquidate as much money for my cash needs. For the near future, I can't pay my lawn care man or my house cleaner. And Jeannie emails, our washer and dryer were needing replacement. Rather than consider this purchase at our leisure, we jumped to buy 2 weeks ago out of fear, not out of confidence in the economy. We need to replace one car. We can only afford to buy used, but we're very concerned we won't find something in time. We are on the cusp of retirement and fear our 401k will, with the effect tariffs will have on the markets. We want to hear from you. You can email us your story at 1a@wamu.org. Now, during Trump's first term, Apple made the shift to open manufacturing sites in India. Now mobile phones have surpassed diamonds as that country's biggest product export. Today, about 1 in 7 phones are made, iPhones particularly, are made in India, and analysts expect that to grow to a quarter of all iPhones by 2027. Trip, what factors influenced Apple's decision to diversify its manufacturing sites beyond China?
largely tariffs, but then there was kind of a double whammy during the Trump administration, and the kind of second shoe to drop, so to speak, for Apple was COVID-19 restrictions and production issues at factories in China. If you'll recall and run back the clock to when the pandemic started, initially China did a very good job of locking down and preventing COVID from spreading, and its factories got back up and online pretty quickly and continued production for Apple and other big manufacturers that operate in China. But then there was years later a major issue where there was a big COVID outbreak at one of Apple's core factories for iPhone production, and it really shut down and impaired production for a long period of time, long enough that Apple had to tell investors that it wasn't going to make as much money in one particular quarter as it expected. And so that combination of tariff pressure in the Trump administration particularly on China and focused on imports from China, and then COVID issues in China led the company to say, okay, we need to reassess our risk and our concentrated manufacturing footprint in China and look elsewhere.
Well, this brings us back to one of President Trump's arguments for tariffs, and that's that it will bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. Now, Neil, we heard from Tripp that Apple created an assembly plant in Texas in 2013 to try to create Mac Pro computers. They ran into a lot of issues. But I think it's important to note that when we talk about the iPhone, we're talking about a lot of components that come together to be the little mini computer we all hold in our hands. So what's the likelihood that this new tariff policy would bring the manufacturing, specifically of tech, like iPhones, back to the U.S.?
Look, we've seen over and over how challenging it is to stand up an entire new ecosystem of industry domestically. You see with semiconductors right now, the CHIPS Act was passed several years ago, and it's happening, but it's happening very slowly. One challenge with this trade policy is supply chains in the modern world are complicated. And so if you ask the automakers, they've spent years, decades, building these complex supply chains that involve production in the U.S., in Mexico, in Canada, goods, supplies crisscross the border many times. Part of the challenge is if the U.S. is tariffing the rest of the world, and you have to relocate everything domestically and create an entire ecosystem from scratch, that's hard to do. And that's hard to do overnight, certainly in the space of a year or two. It takes longer than that, and that's before you get to the things that Tripp was mentioning when Apple tried to build computers in Texas. So if you just don't have the right suppliers, the right screw, you're in a hard position.
So, Inda, how do you think other U.S.-based tech companies who manufacture their goods offshore in countries like China, India, or Vietnam might adapt to these tariffs once they're imposed?
Well, if the tariffs are punitive enough to the point where they are impacting their margins, then there probably will be some shuffling of supply chains. One would expect that both to politically placate the administration, stay on side, and of course for practical economics, they will shuffle some to the US, might shuffle some to other markets. That we've seen that happening in recent years anyway. Production in China has been shuffling out because labor costs there are more expensive, for example. As Tripp mentioned, COVID was an eye-opener for a lot of people in terms of operating businesses there. So there are reasons why supply chains are changing at the moment anyway. And if we do, again, depending on what tariffs come out, if we do have pretty high tariffs, then you would see tech companies say, let's move things around again a bit more. But as Neil said, I should say, it will take time, obviously.
Yeah. Tripp, is there any indication that Apple is preparing to raise the cost of its iPhones or other products to try to offset the effect of tariffs?
I
was out of air pressure.
Apple last spoke to Wall Street analysts. It was late January, right before President Trump introduced the tariffs in China, and so they just said they were monitoring the situation. That said, since those 20% tariffs on China have been levied, analysts have begun to update their models and estimate that Apple could lose something on the order of see its costs increase on iPhone production to the tune of about $8.5 billion a year, and so that's pretty significant, and it could cut into their profits by $7.8 billion if they don't increase prices on iPhones.
Right, and I think we should acknowledge that iPhones are, for many people, a brand new iPhone. It's a luxury item, right? So an increase in the price tag for a new phone, it might send people to a less expensive brand, or they might just decide to hold on to that older model phone for a lot longer. And this is an industry that's really driven by what's new, what's fresh, what's the best technology coming out. So How are you watching American consumers' relationship to technology through that lens?
Well, let's say take China tariffs on goods from China, which is the biggest source of consumer goods coming into the US. We've already had 20% increase in tariffs on all Chinese goods over the past few weeks on top of existing China tariffs. So I think the average level now is somewhere in the 30-odd% range. If we get more tariffs announced today on Chinese goods, well, then you're starting to talk about a pretty serious tariff rate on the kind of electronics that come out of China. And it would be, a foolhardy consumer that wouldn't be responding to that, because those costs will flow into the system. They will be added onto the price of goods, and you would have to expect there to be a reaction among consumers. Now, as always, there are specific idiosyncratic cases with depending on what you're buying. But point is, Jen, we're already talking about a very significant increase in tariffs from China, for example. It's probably set to go even higher. That's likely to have an impact.
Apple CEO Tim Cook donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration and sat alongside other tech giants behind the president as he was sworn into office in January. Trip, how is Tim Cook balancing his relationship with the administration while trying to maintain Apple's extensive overseas supply chain and keeping an eye on Apple's bottom line?
Well, again, as we talked about earlier, Jen, that was a really effective strategy for Tim Cook during the first Trump administration. Apple was able to, and Tim Cook was able to effectively cultivate a pretty strong and close relationship with President Trump. President Trump actually spoke directly about this, saying, the thing that Tim Cook does differently from other chief executives is that he calls me directly. He really prided himself on having a close relationship with Tim Cook. This time around, the president has not been as vocal in kind of highlighting Tim Cook and his relationship with Tim Cook, and the odds of an exemption are becoming greater. It's just not on the table at this juncture. I mean, the administration's been resolute that the 20% tariff on China is going to be on all goods, and there are not going to be exceptions made.
We're talking to Trip Mickle, a Silicon Valley reporter for the New York Times. Also with us, Neil Irwin, chief economic correspondent at Axios, and Enda Curran, the global economy news reporter for Bloomberg News. We're hearing from lots of small business owners. Jeff in Cleveland emails, I have a surf shop. We're going into our first warm season since opening in September 2024. The goods that I pre-ordered in the fall for this year are now subject to tariffs. I'm trying to make it through my first year in business and just lost at least 30% of my margin. This does not bode well for our success. And Andrew emails, I'm a custom music instrument maker specializing in the double bass. I selected a prime spruce from the Italian Alps in October of last year for import in 2025, but in the end, canceled the deal I had made with the forest manager due to uncertainty in the import-export economy. I felt ashamed to back out of my agreement, but unwilling to risk the cost of unpredictability. What a shame. You can share your story with us as we continue our series, How Did This Get Here? If you're a small business or owner, or you were considering making a large purchase, but those plans have changed, we want to hear about it. Email us at 1a@wamu.org. I'm Jen White. You're listening to 1A. Nancy in Chicago says the tariffs are going to hit micro businesses the hardest because we don't buy in huge volumes. As a small production pottery studio, our raw materials will go up and our ready-made clay will go up even higher than it already is.
It goes to the right automatically because I didn't even move it.
And how might Trump's new trade policy specifically impact small American businesses from a variety of sectors, particularly those that are heavily reliant on imports and exports?
I think the point for small business is that it's not economical for them to have their manufacturing or production set up in the US because of labor costs and other costs involved, Jen. So typically they either produce overseas or at the very least they source their components from overseas, so it's more competitive for them, and then they import that. But by definition, if they're a small business, they're probably operating on fairly thin margins. They don't have the huge revenue base that the big multinational corporations have behind them. They certainly don't have the political lobby to fight these tariffs. So the impact on smaller business, I think, is being acute, and that's what's showing up, especially in the data, already seeing their confidence levels fall down. And we have people complaining to us all the time about how it will hurt them.
So that's a small business, but for a big business like iPhones, like Apple, for instance, what are the potential consequences for iPhone customers if global supply chains are disrupted due to Trump's trade policies?
Go straight on.
Look, there are only four options really for a company that's facing a large tariff. It can raise the price, and that is going to lower demand and lower sales. It can take the hit to margins and reduce its profit margin, might even end up at a loss, which isn't good. It can try and force the cost onto its suppliers, and that comes down to market power and who needs who more. Or it can reshore the activity and build factories in the U.S. I think this volatility of the policy environment makes it hard to make those long-term capital expenditures to build domestic capacity, but that's what the president and the administration hope will happen.
Mark emails us this: half of my suppliers are raising their wholesale prices by 10 to 20%. I base my retail prices on my costs, and I cannot absorb the increases. I've cut back on my purchases, anticipating price resistance and an economic slowdown. I'm hoping I won't have to close my shop. In a big picture, how sustainable are tariffs as a long-term economic strategy for the U.S.?
I think it will depend on how the economy responds, Jen. So, for example, at the moment you have this kind of academic argument and the Fed weighing in saying this will be a transitory, using the word transitory again, inflationary impact. So one-off price adjustment, it doesn't necessarily mean an inflation spiral. But I think for the average consumer, and this is where the debate comes in, at the end of the day, they're going to walk into a store and the price of their goods will be more expensive, coming on the back of the worst inflation crisis in 40-odd years. So then you have to see, how will consumers respond? How will confidence in spending respond? How will business investment and hiring respond? And, you know, X months down the road from now, if the economy is in a slower space and there's clear evidence of pain, then that will surely raise questions about how durable are these tariffs and can deals get done. If, on the other hand, the economy is holding up pretty well, and there's evidence that foreign manufacturers are shifting here and employment is holding up, as the administration argues, well, that will only lend support to the current trade policy. So I think it's just going to take a bit of time. There are clear warnings, but it's going to take a bit of time to see how exactly this does play out.
Neil, your thoughts?
Look, the historical record has not been super favorable. President Trump talks about William McKinley in the 1890s when tariffs were really the major thing funding the U.S. government. But by the end of his term, McKinley, right before he was assassinated, wanted to back off of tariffs because of the distortions they created, the dysfunctions, both political and economic. Smoot-Hawley tariffs under the Herbert Hoover in around 1929, 1930 really made the Great Depression worse, and I think everybody spent the post-war period trying to liberalize trade. So the historical record is not fantastic. Will this be different? That's what the Trump administration believes it will.
So lots to watch in the coming months. When you think about specific indicators or consumer behavior that you're keeping an eye on, I'd love to hear from each of you briefly.
Go straight on.
One thing I don't think we've talked a lot about is just when this is happening.
Here we are.
In Apple's history, and for the company, they're 18 years into the iPhone, and there have been a lot of customer complaints about the iPhone looking familiar year after year. And so when you talk about people holding onto phones longer, they're already doing that. And so if you add tariffs and you increase prices or you have another hiccup, this could really be problematic for their business in a bigger way than just what you see on the surface.
Neil, your thoughts?
I'm waiting to see it creep into the hard data about the economy, not just the soft data, the surveys and sentiment indicators, things like that.
And I'll give you the last word.
I think the unemployment rate will be the ultimate arbiter of all of this.
That's Enda Curran, the global economy news reporter for Bloomberg News. Also with us today, Neil Irwin, chief economic correspondent at Axios, and Trent Mickle, Silicon Valley reporter for the New York Times. Thanks to you all. And we'll continue our series, How Did This Get Here, in the coming weeks, looking at other items we rely on. And if you have questions about the current economic picture here in the U.S.,
Eric, you said?
or you're changing your future plans, we want to hear about it. Email us at 1a@wamu.org.
Hold on.
Remember, the 1A
I miss what you were saying. Mark from?
Get your voice heard on the show. It's free, and you'll find it wherever you get your apps. Today's producer was Lauren Hamilton. This program comes to you from WAMU, part of American University in Washington, distributed by NPR. I'm Jen White. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk again tomorrow. This is 1A.
No, that would not be possible because I have a referral for marriages from the Pentagon chaplain's office. So you would be committing an act of war to try to steal money from my future wife, my fiancée. We have a moral warfare issue between me and you. So I suggest you use your calculator to count the number of items that are going to be missing from your inventory instead of trying to steal from mine.
Support for NPR comes from the station.
That's what I just said to you. You're not taking the time to inform me who you are. You're asking me the question that you know and you're refusing to give me the answer, so we're at war. Goodbye, sir. Take it easy.
From BetterHelp.
I'm not that retarded. Yeah, I suggest you try to hit me in the head a little bit harder so to cause me more damage so that my program is not going to be functioning as much, yeah?
At BetterHelp.com.
Good luck. Yeah, bye.
The John D. and Catherine P. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
Deepfake technology allows users to alter photos of people, often taken from social media, and show them in sexual or violent situations that never happened. Many are now so realistic it can be hard to spot them, and making them takes seconds using a smartphone app. Next time on 1A, how deepfakes are damaging the lives of young women and how one community successfully fought back.
This is Nebraska Public Media's HD2 on KUCV Lincoln, KHNE-FM Hastings, KLNE-FM Lexington, KTNE-FM Alliance, KPNE-FM North Platte, KRNE-FM Merriman, KCNE-FM Chadron, KMNE-FM Bassett, and KXNE-FM Norfolk.
Sprung. It's the perfect time to go outside and dive into a great book, like King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby.
That's a Southern crime drama inspired by The Godfather. You know, there's like an ailing patriarch, a family that's falling apart, and the son just to come back and pull everything together.
I'm Ari Shapiro. Fiction for spring on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Here's a forklift.
When you miss something on Nebraska Public Media or want to hear it again, grab a
be able to
podcast from our website.
outside the
It's
truck,
easy
though.
to do.
Oh, there's a mod for that.
NebraskaPublicMedia.org, and you'll find several popular features available to
So here's
download.
the
All about
forklift
books,
on the right.
Friday
We're
Live
good.
Extra, and many of our news stories and features are all available right now at NebraskaPublicMedia.org.
Philadelphia, this is Fresh Air. I'm Tanya Mosley. Today, legal scholar and immigration expert Daniel Canstrom joins us to talk about the latest arrests of international college students and what the threats of deportation tell us about the Trump administration's larger strategy. Canstrom, who has studied the impacts of immigration policy over the last 25 years, says while this country has always had a fraught relationship with immigration, the rounding up of students who are here legally is exceptionally harsh.
We're seeing uniquely extreme examples of it, done with a gratuitous cruelty, arrogant cruelty, that has rarely been seen in the history of this country. And the point of that is to send a message, is to scare people.
And Canstrom says those tactics are working.
Oh, I can't. Oh, I'm too much on the left.
First News.
Oh, I'm too far.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is set to announce a raft of new tariffs later today. NPR's Tamara Keith with details.
President Trump has been hyping up this day for weeks, saying tariffs will boost the U.S. economy, even though most economists say the cost of tariffs will be paid by American consumers. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says one of Trump's goals is to build back a domestic manufacturing base in the U.S.
It's simple. If you make your product in America, you will pay no tariffs.
Manufacturing in the U.S., however, is generally more expensive. Leavitt says tariffs will take effect immediately, though Trump has also said he is open to negotiation. So whatever is announced today may not be where the tariffs ultimately land. Tamara Keith, NPR News, the White House.
Liberals have retained their majority of the Wisconsin Supreme Court despite Elon Musk's multi-million-dollar effort to get a conservative on the court. Judge Susan Crawford defeated Judge Brad Schimmel. Chuck Kernbach of member station WUWM reports a battle over the ideological balance of the court signal where voters might stand on national politics.
This race, even though it was the court is nonpartisan, it was definitely a win for Democrats, and they're claiming victory against the president, his administration, and Musk. And I heard that from voters, too. They say Musk's DOGE effort is going too fast, too broadly. From young voters, though, I also heard a lot about reproductive rights, which was the big issue in the last state Supreme Court election we had here 2 years ago.
Chuck Kernbach reporting. Climate scientists in the Southwest say only 2 states, Nevada and Arizona, are doing meaningful work to recycle and reuse water from the drying Colorado River. NPR's Kirk Sigler reports on a new study that comes as 7 states are under federal orders to negotiate a deal to use far less water.
Climate scientists at UCLA crunched numbers from water districts across the 7 western states where 40 million people and countless farms depend on the Colorado River. They found that Nevada is recycling 85% of its total wastewater. Las Vegas, after all, has been internationally recognized for this. But despite a law passed in 2009, California, the largest wastewater producer, only recycles about a quarter. Colorado and its booming population, not even 4%. Scientists say these states are missing a huge opportunity to access more water ahead of a looming deadline of next year when federal regulators could order mandatory cuts if a new water-sharing truce isn't brokered. Kirk Sigler, NPR News.
Actor Val Kilmer's died. He was 65. His daughter confirmed Kilmer passed away yesterday from pneumonia. Kilmer's roots were the stage, but fans are remembering roles in several blockbusters as well, including as Iceman in Top Gun, Batman, Tombstone, and as Jim Morrison in The Doors. From Washington, this is NPR News. Nearly 30 years ago, listeners around the globe fell in love with the Buena Vista Social Club. The band featured Cuban musicians in their 70s and 80s playing old classics. Now, their story is being told on Broadway, as NPR's Isabela Gomez Sarmiento reports.
Like in real life, the musical behind Buena Vista Social Club is about a music producer trying to assemble a group of older musicians to record an album. Artists like pianist Rubén González, guitarist Compay Segundo, and singer Ibrahim Ferrer were all performers in 1950s Havana. But after the Cuban Revolution, many musicians had to look for other jobs to make a living.
It says excellent,
It wasn't until the 1990s
damage.
when they formed Buena Vista Social Club and released an album with the same name that they achieved international success. The Broadway musical takes creative liberties with the characters, but the music remains at the heart of their story. Isabela Gomez Sarmiento, NPR News.
Okay,
millions of people are under tornado alerts in effect from central Oklahoma to northwestern Arkansas up to northern Missouri. The National Weather Service is projecting numerous twisters today and tonight. The outbreak may include EF3 plus intensity tornadoes with wind speeds between 136 and 165 miles per hour. They can cause severe damage. The region's also under the threat of heavy flood-generating rainfall, and that risk extends to Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. The Dow is up 61 points. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from Drexel University, whose cooperative education program positions students to explore future careers and discover their ideal profession before graduation. This is experiential education.
37
More
miles.
at drexel.edu.
Moving container, we could try this. Is a little job in here.
Ready to roll.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Tanya Mosley. In recent weeks, immigration agents have descended on college campus towns across the country and carried out waves of arrests of international students. Just last week, a video circulated of 6 ICE agents in masks and plain clothes surrounding and arresting a 30-year-old Turkish PhD student from Tufts University as she stepped out for dinner during Ramadan. She held a valid F1 student visa, but was detained because it had been revoked, reportedly without warning. Her case is not an isolated one. Several arrests have taken place at other universities, too, like Columbia, the University of Minnesota, and the University of Alabama, where an Iranian doctoral student was taken into custody after his visa was annulled by the State Department. To help us understand the legal dimensions of these actions, what they mean not only for international students, but for U.S. visa and even green card holders, really anyone who wasn't born in the United States, is Daniel Canstrom, a professor at Boston College Law School and scholar on immigration and human rights. He founded the Boston College Immigration and Asylum Clinic, where law students advocate for migrants, and directs the Post-Deportation Human Rights Project, which explores the long-term impacts of deportation on families and communities. Canstrom's latest book, The New Deportation Delirium, examines the sprawling system of deportation in our country since 9/11. Daniel Canstrom, welcome to Fresh Air.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm happy to have your expertise on the show today. And I want to start with the case of Romeysa Ozturk.
Go straight
She's
on.
a PhD student at Tufts University. She's from Turkey and is here on a student visa. And this video that circulated last week, we see the arrest unfold. We see a man in a black hoodie and a face mask approach her as she leaves her apartment. And that man grabs her hands. And I want to play a little bit from that video. What we're about to hear is Ozturk sort of scream a little. It appears she doesn't know for a moment what's happening. We hear her yelling out, and then we see some other people in plain clothes who we later learn are ICE officers. They surround her, and one person pulls out a badge, and then they cuff her and take her off. Professor Canstrom, what was your reaction when you first saw this video?
I think my immediate reaction was what I hope would be anyone's immediate reaction, which was horror. This is a very, very extreme example of government power, masked agents, which are extremely unusual in this country, arresting somebody suddenly without any apparent warning to what must have been for her a terrifying and probably unknown fate for reasons that she probably had some general understanding of, but no specific charging document, no specific warrant, no reading of charges, no explanation. This is a horrible thing to see. One would think that tactics like this would be limited to the most extreme cases, you know, SWAT teams or hostage situations, but to see a graduate student in Somerville, Massachusetts pulled off the street, it had to be terrifying, and that was my first reaction. I can tell you about my second, third, and fourth reaction as we go forward, because I had a lot of different reactions.
A judge in Massachusetts temporarily barred the deportation of Ozturk, but the Department of Homeland Security said that she was originally detained and her visa terminated because she was in support of the U.S. designated terrorist group Hamas. And what they appear to be referencing is an op-ed she wrote that was critical of Israel. Can she be deported for that?
Well, this is a kind of unknown situation. What we're going to have to see is the relationship between the government's power to regulate the status of non-citizens who are in this country, especially non-citizens who are here temporarily, although temporarily could mean many years, as it did in her case, versus the general protections of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of association, and general protections of due process of law, and general procedural protections in our government. And those things are going to be tested in her case among many others. The government does have enormous power over students who are coming here to study, but the government is also restrained by the Constitution, and we haven't seen this particular
so the only entrance is there.
used very often. In fact, it's quite rare, and so the courts are going to have to sort out how to calibrate that balance. My own feeling is that unless they can come up with some activities that she actually engaged in that were against the law, they may have a hard time deporting her simply for speech or for publishing an op-ed.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, this question that I think continues to come up as we see more and more arrests, whether students who hold a visa have First Amendment rights. And I think what I'm hearing from you is it's both yes and no.
It is both yes and no, and the provision at issue here, goes back quite a long way and gives specific authority to the Secretary of State with a very vague set of standards. If they call it the alien, but let's say the non-citizens' activities or actions or speech in the United States would have potentially serious foreign policy consequences. And then there's an even higher standard if they're trying to deport somebody for things that would be protected under the Constitution if done by a U.S. citizen. So it hasn't been invoked much precisely because the courts have never really clarified the exact relationship here. But to the extent that there is precedent for this, I think the precedent is rather strong that the First Amendment does not use the word citizen. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law.
Turn left.
And courts have recognized that and have recognized that due process also applies to any person.
Something else I was just curious about, just a side note, but ICE took Ozturk to a detention center in Louisiana before her attorneys could get a judge to block that transfer. This is the same center where they took Mahmoud Khalil. He's the Columbia University graduate student who was arrested in early March. Why Louisiana and why that detention center? Is it something about that detention center or something by design?
It is something by design, and it's not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for quite some time now in this country, where people have been moved to these detention centers in Louisiana and elsewhere. And originally, I think it was part of a change in detention of non-citizens who were facing deportation. There had been a use of local facilities, and there were problems with that, by which I mean local jails and state-run facilities. There were all sorts of questions about conditions. So there was a move to try to create more federal detention facilities. But when one asks why was this particular one situated in a fairly remote area,
I turned the wrong way.
Hours, maybe
let's
more
go back
from New Orleans, as I recall. Lawyers have routinely noted two things. One, it makes it incredibly difficult to actually be in touch to visit with a client, which is important if you want to represent somebody. It's very helpful if you can sit in a room with them and look into their eyes, get to know them as a client, and have long interviews with them. And second, that particular part of the country and the particular judges in that part of the country tend to be rather supportive of the government and rather unfriendly to lawyers for non-citizens. So it has a reputation as being a difficult place if a person is moved there, because so-called habeas corpus petitions have to be filed in the place where the person is actually held. This actually was an issue in Mr. Khalil's case, too, about whether you could bring him back to the place where he has his witnesses and his lawyers and where the alleged activities took place. So there's often a struggle about that. But this is not a new government tactic. However, like many of the tactics that we're witnessing now, it's being used in extremely expeditious ways and often apparently with the intent of avoiding a judge's order not to do it.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the latest immigration arrests on college campuses with Daniel Canstrom, a legal scholar and professor specializing in immigration law, human rights, and public policy at Boston College. Our interview was recorded yesterday. We'll continue our conversation after a short break. This is Fresh Air.
Is right there on the left, so we're going to turn left. After the railroad.
This is Fresh Air, and today my guest is Daniel Canstrom. He's a legal scholar and professor specializing in immigration law, human rights, and public policy at Boston College School of Law. You know, one of the things I want to talk with you about is what you are seeing in your work, because you have, as a professor, as a legal scholar, the ability to see the big picture, but then you also have your ear to the ground as part of this
7:27
Boston
p.m.
College Immigration and
We
Asylum
cannot
Clinic,
take
which you founded. Students there provide services for people like advocating for people who are detained. What are you hearing right now? What are some of the concerns that people are coming into the clinic talking about? What are some of the students seeing that are working with international students and others who may be concerned about their status at this moment?
Well, even beyond our clinical programs, what I hear from a range of lawyers throughout the country and from potential clients and from former clients and from family members of potential clients and former clients and from colleagues who are citizens or non-citizens or naturalized citizens or married to non-citizens is a tremendous sense of fear. And I think that is a big part of what the administration has been aiming to do. So the administration has acted on the shoulders of a system that was long recognized as being extremely discretionary, extremely deferential to government power, potentially extremely arbitrary, potentially extremely harsh. I've been writing about this for more than 25 years, and yet we're seeing uniquely extreme examples of it, done with a kind of cruelty and a kind of, I would say, gratuitous cruelty, arrogant cruelty that has rarely been seen in the history of this country. And the point of that is to send a message, is to scare people. And it is working. I just heard this morning about a person who was apparently sent to this prison in El Salvador who had been under an order from an immigration judge specifically not to be sent to El Salvador. The government has admitted that it was a mistake, and yet they say, well, but there's nothing we can really do about it because now he's in the custody of El Salvador. It's hard to imagine a more terrifying set of facts than that.
What I'm hearing from you is, as a legal expert, you believe that this focus on these students who are here legally is a scare tactic, but can you get a little bit deeper into this idea? Because Trump has laid out very clearly during his campaign trail in his first few days of office that he wanted to deport millions of undocumented immigrants. But this focus on students who are here legally, what do these arrests tell us about this larger immigration strategy?
Finding a new route.
What it tells us is that a lot of the campaign rhetoric about a problem of undocumented immigration
Let's find a new route.
was really not true because I think people in the administration knew, as those of us who studied the history of this knew, that it would be basically impossible to round up and deport 10 to 15 million people without establishing a massive and extremely expensive and extremely brutal police state. So that agenda was always problematic, as compared with the agenda of shutting down the southern border, which I would argue is also quite problematic, but that seemed to be a little more potentially doable. But what we're actually seeing is something quite different, and it's actually a quite different form of deportation. It has different justifications and goals. And the goals here seem to be political, not really aimed at immigration enforcement or the undocumented. It's aimed at the documented. It's aimed at, as you say, people here who are students, people here with green cards. I would expect that the next step will be people who have been naturalized citizens. And in this sense, it also dovetails with the executive order that was designed to try to overturn the 14th Amendment grant of birthright citizenship. So you would see a tremendous expansion of government power over the bodies and minds
I'll find a new route.
Words and the writings of many millions of people.
Make a U-turn
when possible. This debate is very old in this country. It goes back to the founding generation. One of the laws that's being used now by the Trump administration, again, I would argue in ways that will ultimately be challenged, if not overruled completely by courts, was something called the Alien Enemies Act. And that came from a time when the government, in that case it was the John Adams administration, had great fear about French revolutionaries and Irish revolutionaries. And a couple of laws were passed, these so-called Alien and Sedition Acts. But even at that time, Thomas Jefferson, who opposed this sort of enforcement,
Oh,
said
we don't have
and
it
wrote,
because we have the other.
"The friendless alien has been
We cannot get
selected as the safest subject
the
of the
contract
first
offer
experiment,
because we
but
already
the
have the
citizen
other
will
one
soon
selected.
follow, or in fact has already
We'd have to
followed,
cancel
because
the
they
other
were using
one,
the
see
so-called
those
solution
ones.
citizens. And every time we've seen these episodes, they tend to have a metastatic quality. They expand in dangerous ways, because once you let this sort of government power take root, it can be very hard to uproot it. And that, again, is why it's important to note that the First Amendment does not say citizen. The First Amendment is both a grant of rights to people to speak, but it's also a restraint on the power of government to suppress speech and to suppress ideas. And so when you see these attempts to shut people up by intimidating them and by terrifying them, that does raise very fundamental questions that this country has had to deal with in recurring ways over many generations, and now we're going to have to fight those battles again.
Let's talk just a little bit more about some of the things we're seeing in real time. We're hearing stories of students and others preemptively leaving the country, basically self-deporting. Is that also a strategy, basically to get people to leave on their own?
It's absolutely a strategy. The administration has been quite clear about it. They've said it repeatedly. Again, they're not the first administration to think of this.
Turn left.
You can find this in various historical periods before. But I think the terrorist aspect of it, the threats, are quite profound right now. And I mean, I get calls from people all the time asking if they should leave the country. Personally, I don't think we're at a moment where I'm advising people to leave the country, I mean, in general, but I'm certainly advising people to think hard before traveling, and that includes people with green cards, which is pretty unique in my experience. Over many years, there's been a general sense that people who have green cards, that is to say they have lawful permanent resident status, which, by the way, is a status that a person is completely entitled to hold for their whole life if they want to, or for some reason they can't naturalize and become a U.S. citizen. That was designed to be a stable, protected status, and it is extremely unusual for the government to start digging around in a person's past to find reasons to deport a person with a green card. That, by the way, was one of the unique things that Marco Rubio declared in the Halil case, that he had revoked his green card status. I'm unaware of any provision in law that allows the Secretary of State to simply revoke a person's green card status. That person is entitled to a hearing, as I think we will see. And at that hearing, the government is going to have to explain what its reasons were for trying to deport this person. And, we'll see what the evidence is.
Tell us your thoughts about this action taken against birthright citizenship for anybody born in the U.S. after February 19th, 2025. I mean, it's been fought in the court, but it would limit birthright citizenship to at least one parent being a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident to qualify. You've been very critical of this. Talk to me about the ramifications of something like this.
Well, first of all, I think it's useful to go back and ask why this country has birthright citizenship in the first place. Because I think many people think that is kind of odd. U.S. citizenship is such an incredibly valuable commodity. Why do we just give it to people based on the accident of having been born here? That's a fair question. But the answer is important. It was created in the aftermath of the Civil War, primarily to redress a situation in which African Americans, particularly slaves and even freed slaves and even people who had not been enslaved at all, were deemed by the Supreme Court not to be citizens. And the country realized that having a large cohort of people who were excluded from the courts and from the right to vote and all the aspects of citizenship was a very dangerous thing. And it was integral to slavery, but it was also a bad thing in general. And so we created an amendment to the Constitution that guarantees that anyone who's born in the United States, subject to its jurisdiction, which actually means only excluding a very small category of diplomats and Native American Indians, perhaps, and people on warships or invading armies, those people all get citizenship. So we opted for a generous conception of citizenship. And I think that has stood us well.
Too far back?
The Supreme Court upheld it in the late 19th century. It's been reaffirmed ever since then in many court opinions. And yet it keeps coming under challenge for a variety of reasons in particular historical periods.
Storage.
But if we remember why we created it in the first place, then I think that helps us to understand what's so dangerous about trying to remove it.
Same color.
Our guest is legal scholar and immigration expert Daniel Canstrom. Our interview was recorded yesterday. We'll continue our conversation after a short break. I'm Tanya Mosley, and this is Fresh Air.
Doesn't exist. It's an ad blocker.
The Neubauer Family Foundation supports WHYY's Fresh Air and its commitment to sharing ideas and encouraging meaningful conversation. Support for NPR comes from the station. And from Bank of America, from local shops to global enterprises, Bank of America is committed to helping businesses of all sizes make every move matter. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/banking for business. And from Eric and Wendy Schmidt, through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org.
On the TED Radio Hour, pain expert Dr. Amy Baxter says pain is our body's warning system.
But when it ceases to serve us, we can choose to ignore it. We don't have to let it rule us. That is the most important paradigm shift for dealing with pain.
Ideas about pain relief. That's next time on the TED Radio Hour.
Nebraska Public Media's news department reports in-depth on Nebraska news every day. If you miss a story when it originally aired, you can find it and listen online. Go to nebraskapublicmedia.org and click on News. Here, along with national news from NPR, you'll find local news stories produced by our award-winning news department.
What are Nebraska's road laws on right-hand turns? Right turn on red. In Nebraska, you are generally allowed to make a right turn at a red traffic signal after coming to a complete stop, unless there is a sign indicating otherwise. Before turning, you must yield to any pedestrians, bicyclists, or other vehicles that have the right of way.
Go straight on.
That's a good break, huh? Sixth gear.
Caution, please mind the speed limit. Go straight on.
Columbus. I think we didn't stop there at first. It's the first time. Yeah.
Caution, please mind the speed limit. Go straight on. Caution, please mind the speed limit. Go straight on. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right.
Okay, we gotta stop here. I'm gonna turn on the red light. Very nice. We
Go
made
straight
it.
on.
35. So I think 10 is 35. 29. 10. 28. Let's go up. Go down to 11. 34. That's good enough. Gonna turn left here.
Get ready to turn left.
Just two entrance, one probably there. This is a different company.
Turn left, and then turn left. Rerouting. When possible, make a U-turn. Turn left.
The wheels are up in the air. Yeah, I think that's it. I stuck for real? Pretty much, yeah. And the truck is off. So I have to disconnect the trailer.
Okay, here we go. Turn right.
Cancel it. That's enough. Or get a... Yeah, let's get a repair, right? New service adjustment, tow service 1. Current delivery cancel. Okay, repair. Okay, we're gonna go here. Doesn't want to let us turn, man.
Drive safe. Go straight on.
So we'll have to turn to the left.
Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Turn right. It's all over now.
Okay. Clamshell buckets. Let's try that. Got a steel
Okay,
build
here we
ring.
go.
It's on the right.
Turn right. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Finally, we are here.
Steel company. Shit. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, okay. Let's stop. And get it right. Because I can't see it. So I have to turn more. Yeah, we can see it on the left there. You could see the light on the right, and this is still off now. And it's still not, so we have to brake really. That's the trick. Now it should be good. I was just a little bit too much on the right. Left, 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 right, 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 left, left, left.
Let's do this.
Okay, how far is it? 11 miles to Taylor. $14,000 clamshell bucket. Let's see them. Yeah. Double. Yeah, the double. Double bucket. Avalanche steel.
Turn right. Get ready to turn right. Turn right.
Company name here. Is this Faraday really? Let's see it. Maybe, oh, from navigation. Yep. Okay, we have no audio that we do. We have a photo here. Let's move that over there. Over there. Should be good enough.
Ready to roll. Turn right.
And I hit the pole. Anyways, but we're, so that to do a button hook, that's the trick. There's a railroad, so we're good. Clear that. Small train, it's only 5 wagon.
Go straight on. Turn left. Go straight on. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left.
Perfect. Ah ha ha, we know how to clear the corners now. This is very good.
Go straight on.
Very good. Photo coming up, it's on the bridge. There's the light, green light. Here, we're past.
Keep
actually.
left, and then turn left.
Okay, we've got to turn left after that. Photo is on the left. No, Andrew Jackson Higgins National Memorial. So this is in Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, Texas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. Here it is. So the Andrew Jackson Higgins National Memorial. There it is. So just in the center. Media photo mode. And we're pretty good. We can go a little bit back, but not too much. Actually, we want to have the posts off. Yeah, the posts are not there. So photo mode, enter, take picture. Should be good enough, right? I don't know what those flags are. Maybe, oh, it looks like Texas. So this is gotta be state flags, yeah. Okay, now we have to turn left.
Turn left. straight on.
That's a nice little bridge here, 25.
Get ready to turn left.
Yep.
Turn left.
There's a roundabout here.
You have arrived at your destination. Your route guidance is now finished.
Confirm. Oh, there, I see it. So if I turned around there, I would come back, still not be able to, so I would have to go there for real, yeah. Either way. Or back up all the way. This seems the easiest, it's just to do it like this. Oh, we're just stuck there. Okay. Because of the pile? Oh, we're touching the bottom. Oh my god, that's quite the... I think we'll have to detach the trailer. Oh, I need it. That mirror is gone. Okay, we're gonna finish this now. 105.
End of number 75, Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, 10:44 a.m. New York time.